So it's important to note that I truly believe this law is just for show. It's a complete just vote getter, panty dropper for campaign dollars, right?
Yeah.
But a team of Republicans in Michigan have proposed a bill called the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act, which would, in theory, ban all pornography in the state of Michigan. And if porn exists or anything along that line, it's punishable by felony convictions, six-figure fines.
Greetings and welcome to
YAS Podcast, formerly known as
YAS Stripper Podcast.
This is our podcast, all of ours.
A podcast for all sex workers.
In this podcast, we will discuss the ins and outs, ups and downs of our lives and experiences as sex workers. I am your host, Daisy Ducati.
I am your Hopra, Gigi Holiday.
I'm your stripper queen from the north, Onyx.
I'm A.M. Davies, and this is YAS Podcast.
Hello and welcome to YAS Podcast. My name is Daisy Ducati. I will be your host today. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to changing public perception through media. And if you're really enjoying our podcast, please consider donating at yaswork.org. We are here today with Michael McGrady Jr., a good friend of mine, and also the contributing legal editor for AVN Magazine. How you doing today, Michael?
I'm good, Daisy. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you today. First, before we get started, what pronouns do you use?
Thank you for asking. I am a he, him, and I appreciate that you're asking. Like, a lot of people don't do that anymore, given times we're in, so thank you.
Yeah, we're in some weird times, but
Very weird times.
we really try to respect people's identity and representation here, so it's important to us. So why don't we begin by telling our listeners a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
All right. So as you said, my name's Michael McGrady. Michael McGrady Jr. to be specific. If my father knew what I did for a living, he'd probably disown me. But I am the legal contributing editor covering politics and legal that intersect with the adult entertainment industry and sex workers' rights for AVN Media Network, which publishes AVN Magazine and AVN.com. I'm contract, so I cannot necessarily speak as an official representative of AVN, but I am often there writing and doing all sorts of crazy stuff. And I also am a contributor to various publications. I'm a columnist for The Pitch, Kansas City, here in Missouri, where I live. And I contribute regularly to various publications about, tech, about digital identity online for queer people like myself. I'm a bisexual man, but I'm very proud of being that. And, a variety of other subjects and topics that I care deeply about. Before I started covering, this space, I covered marijuana, vaping, alcohol. I've always been gravitating towards what is traditionally known as the sin industries. So, but I think I found my home covering porn, and I'm very happy being here. So, it's kind of what I do.
And we're happy that you're here doing the work that you do because it's so important right now. We're in such weird times in the industry in the legal regard. There's so
very
many.
Much so.
Yeah, it's important to stay up to date on that. So how did you get into journalism?
So I actually never thought I would be a journalist. I majored in political science. I thought I was just going to be working in government or some form of public service along those lines. But more or less, I have always enjoyed writing and reading and all that. So, believe it or not, when I was in college as an undergraduate, like my first year or two, I thought I was a conservative as a product of my parents'
Yeah.
very typical political socialization. You think you have your parents' viewpoints, but the more you grow, you realize that that's truly never really the case. And so I quickly learned that I am uh, who I am, and who I am is someone who just wants to be someone that's left alone, let people live their lives. People have bodily autonomy. People have their own freedom of speech. I guess that's a little more libertarian, but I guess I'm more left wing than that. So it's just I really do care about respect and LGBTQ plus rights, and supporting the community that way. That's kind of what drove me into journalism in the first place. I started as a trade journalist covering tobacco and that sort of stuff, but when I started to see that there's a lot of efforts to initiate what I would call prohibition or anything like that, prohibitive mindset, it really does kind of spread across the spectrum of things that make you feel good.
Yeah.
When I was doing this type of journalism, one of my favorite organizations to talk to and work with was the Drug Policy Alliance, and the Drug Policy Alliance said everybody's on drugs, and that couldn't be more true. And I'm not just saying that I'm on drugs right now. I mean, I have a beer right here, but other than that, it's just like I uh, took that kind of to heart, and I was like, well, everybody gets horny, everybody gets attracted, everybody has some sort of sexual interest,
Yeah.
and then that's why porn exists. That's why sex work exists. It's um it's just something along those lines that I gravitated towards, and I staged my entire professional career on it, and I'm very proud of that.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're here doing the work that you do, because we need you.
Well, we need you too, Daisy. So.
Thank you. we gotta be in this together. So how did you get involved with AVN, with working for AVN?
So AVN hired me in the summer of 2023 to the position. I was a contributor for a lesser known, smaller adult industry blog called
Yeah.
Why Not, and Why Not was going through major institutional change and all that, and a lot of bad stuff coming out about that company. And I just wanted to kind of jump ship, and I reached out to actually Brian Gross, who was the PR guy for AVN, and Brian actually owe a lot to him for connecting me to the great folks over at AVN, especially on the news side, Dan Miller, Peter Warren, and really kind of escalated from there, and escalated in a good way. I care. I will do anything for to get this job out and all that, so that I truly appreciate not that get this job out, but to do this job accurately and effectively, and for the benefit of the industry. So it's very nice to be here and doing all that. So
That's awesome. So let's talk about a little bit about what's going on in our world recently regarding sex work laws. There's been a lot of changing laws and a lot of new legislation that is directly affecting our industry. So first, let's talk about the age verification stuff that's going on. So with all the age verification stuff that's going on, there's a direct attack on the industry, basically. Like, what perspective on this?
it is fair to say that it is a direct attack. In the time spent, I've been covering age verification multiple years. It's revealed that it's not a child safety protocol. It's not a child safety measure. It's a measure that is advocated by opponents on both sides of the aisle, liberal and progressive. I mean, progressive and conservative. But conservatives view it as a censorship tool to prevent, the distribution and sharing of information that is uh, even remotely sexual in
Yeah.
nature. It doesn't even have to do with pornography. It could be just as simple as, bodily autonomy or a web page on Planned Parenthood's website or anything like that. But on the progressive side, it's more or less a response to try and provide this sense of bipartisanship that they want to have with the conservatives in power now. And it's basically blowing up in their faces because it's, again, leading to censorial measures that favor conservative ideology more than, a more liberal or more progressive or more pluralistic ideology.
Yeah.
What we saw with the Supreme Court and Free Speech Coalition at all, the Paxton, that was something I've never seen in my time covering the First Amendment, seen covering just the news in general, where the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 with the conservative majority, indicating that porn can be considered a lesser form of free speech, a lesser protected form of speech in the commission of, quote, protecting minors, which, I think we're all for in this industry, but comes in the framework of, well, we have to now rely on these entire companies that we've never even heard of before, like Yodi or Encode or anything like that, that we don't even know who or what they're tied to. And ultimately led into a whole dynamic, not characteristic, sorry, of they're creating a artificial market for these online safety software providers that companies like ALO, NKL, Web Group Czech Republic, all these parent companies of the tube sites, not to mention the parent companies of, the studio sites, the actual studios themselves, the imprints, fan sites, personal sites, they have to comply with these laws or face penalties that could ultimately ruin a small business, ruin a individual creator, by thousands of dollars, if not millions.
Yeah.
A lot of people overlook the fact that age verification is a labor issue in a lot of ways, and that's important because the majority of people that work in adult entertainment are independent contractors, they're small businesses, and they make on average less than six figures.
Yeah.
Less than 50,000, in fact. And that's just a characteristic of a lot of people just trying to go independent, do their thing, but that's because we're in an ecosystem that's so platform dependent. And it's more complicated than that. Sorry, I'm ranting.
No, it's frustrating because there's already existing software to protect children from viewing adult content. Like there's been software since at least the 90s that can screen your internet traffic and make sure that you can't access certain types of content, and all adult content has to be registered as adult content. So adding this extra layer of putting the burden on content creators and the sites selling the content to additionally use this new software that, again, you said we don't know necessarily like what it's connected to or where that information's going. And then also people are having to put their IDs into this database that suddenly knows what kind of porn you watch is a very scary situation because you don't know how that information's being handled and stored.
And so, like, one of the biggest talking points of these companies, when it comes to these age verification companies, no, it's not like they're a legal company. These are established technology companies. You look them up. They do B2B sales. They work in the B2B market, the business to business market. And they are contracted with government agencies around the world. Yes, they're high tech. They exist. And that's great. But they've never done in their history a major commercial rollout to address the scope and influx of traffic to a porn site. Porn sites get a lot of traffic. And what they are using to escalate and further scale out their ability to meet the demand is rely on artificial intelligence, rely on very little human checks, very few identity checks. They're using these AI augmented facial scans that guess someone's age. And even though accuracy has most certainly improved over the years, and it's gotten much better to a median age error of like 1 to 3 years, the software has not been trained on darker complexions of skin. They've not been trained on older models. They have not been trained on people with facial hair. They've not been trained on anything. They're trained with images that are already available. And it's also important to note that a lot of these models use image models, use language models and image models to be trained on images of children that are already on the internet. And they compare that to an image set to an adult, and that's how you train that AI. And when you think of it, that's exploitative in its nature too. Because people should have the right to, secure their biometrics, their biometric data. And what I'm seeing is that there are companies that then go forth and say these scans take place, just a second, then they mark a hash code or some sort of identifier that says, okay, this person logging on from this IP address is an adult. And then they dump the data, they dump the image, they dump any what is known as PPI, PII, I'm sorry, personally identifying information, and they dump that and it's deleted from their databases. What I'm seeing though is that there's still footprints left. There's still digital footprints left that could lead to someone being identified if a hacker or a bad actor wants to use that data against someone. And there was just not too long ago, I just wrote about for AVN how one age verification provider literally is retaining information of URLs to videos on a particular website, identifying what people are watching. And, they say, oh, we're secure, we have standards, that's great. The industry has standards, that's great too. But, it's security studies 101. Nothing is truly secure. And you can't just say our systems are impenetrable, our systems are all this stuff and that. So that's something I really care about to say.
That brings up another concern in an era where LGBTQ and all types of queer identities are being attacked. If someone is looking at a certain type of content, then they can be profiled a certain way. And that can be a dangerous situation as well.
And, that bothers me immensely too, because even though this data is not retained in large swaths, there's still elements of it. There's still little pieces of, little cookie crumbs, right? A cookie trail, a crumb trail of what could be an identifying factor to someone or something that lead to that person being found, or even extorted through some sort of, cyber attack or scheme or something like that.
Yeah.
And being that, LGBTQ people are already in a society and an environment that places them below as second-class citizens, this could be used to great defect, to great detriment to censoring forms of expression that are otherwise still protected by the First Amendment, still legal, not even pornographic in nature, and, are not even, if anything, controversial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's scary times, man. And we don't know where the laws are going to go that are trying to criminalize queer people. And if there's a bunch of saved data that connects people's identity, like personal identity, to queerness, and then suddenly it is criminal to be queer, then that information is out there and available when it would normally not be.
And and that scares me too. I'm part of that community as well. And it's just I live in a very conservative state. But it's just I do that for family reasons, blah blah blah. But it's more along the lines of you have to secure yourself. You have to think of yourself first in a lot of situations. Whereas it shouldn't have been like that. Or like before, or it's gotten worse now, where the anonymity, the benefits of the internet have, they're disappearing. And
Yeah.
when anonymity is minimized, speech is minimized. And, that's why we have VPNs. That's why we have proxies. That's why we have all this anonymity software to help circumvent these things. Age verification laws are ultimately pointless when VPNs exist. What are you going to do next? Outlaw VPNs or require age verification on VPNs? That's what one lawmaker, no, not one lawmaker, that's what one regulator in the United Kingdom wants to do. They want to force adults to verify their age to use a VPN. Yeah. I think that's the Children's Commissioner of the United Kingdom. Or, the Children's Commissioner of England. So that's one way they want to do it, is they say, well, if children can download VPNs, blah blah blah, they're going to see porn. Well, what if the parent wants the child to have a VPN to protect that child's data?
Yeah.
Then you're leaving so many back doors open for exploitation of the child.
There's a lot of legitimate reasons to be using a VPN other than being able to view porn.
Yeah, I use VPNs for work all the time. I'm a part-time college professor. I use a VPN for that. I'm a journalist, as you know. I use a VPN for that.
Yeah.
No, I use different profiles in the VPN and all that. I have 2 different laptops I use for work. I have a phone that has 2 different SIMs and different VPNs built in. I have a DNS server built in with VPN to secure my stuff. I even use a VPN when I watch TV. It's just I care about that stuff.
Yeah. It's a data security issue, and to restrict access to that is dangerous.
And, United States doesn't have a strong data law like Europe does or what California has. And, so we're kind of stuck with this whole, now we have this inconsistent patchwork of age verification and, quote unquote privacy laws, when in reality, these privacy laws have nothing to do with privacy. It's to verify your age in order to just do something as simple as jack off. So it's just I don't want to, there's a reason why these laws are popping up in predominantly conservative environments.
Yeah.
And it's because they want to stop porn from trickling out. But then you have social media networks like X, like Reddit, like Instagram, that, they're pipelines for content creators to get traffic. But if you're going to use that standard of porn, then why aren't you doing that to platforms like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that also brings up another issue. If all of the legitimate porn sites are restricted to such an extent that it becomes impossible to operate. There will always be illegitimate porn sites that don't follow laws in general, where the traffic ends up going.
And that's been proven.
Yeah. And those sites are far more dangerous and far more likely to have illegal content and to not follow any sort of laws regarding access of minors. So it actually makes the situation worse instead of better.
And that's true. And, the Federal Trade Commission in the state of Utah was able to reach a settlement with ALO, the parent company of Pornhub, recently.
Mm-hmm.
But that settlement only deals with the fact that ALO could not properly prevent, the activity of third-party users uploading material that was unlawful, that was considered CSAM or NPII or some other form of, non-consensual material or sexual abuse imagery, or was even, content piracy or, intellectual property theft. So the FTC ultimately is now co-opting the role of Pornhub as just simply the platform owner to be reporting further as an actor for the state at suspected cases, things that aren't even, if they are suspected or flagged as such, sure, go through the verification process, go through the investigation, but are highly likely, 99% of the time, to be legal forms of expression.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't blame ALO for, wanting to have a positive relationship. I shouldn't say positive, a non-carceral relationship with federal government, especially because they missed that. But it's important to note that I still think that the FTC settlement that was just recently passed is highly problematic. We're going to see a lot more of that moving forward. We're going to see S videos, that's NetSex, that's Hamster,
Mm-hmm.
ultimately getting boned from whatever government agency and whatever government, whatever country, say fuck y'all and all that.
And it also ends up affecting what kind of content gets made. Because all of these platforms are constantly under attack for having to prove the legitimacy of the content, then they create new rules about what kind of content can be posted, and it limits the creativity of the creators that are grown adults doing a job. And I know from my personal experience, a lot of the content that I got in the industry to create as a content creator, I am no longer allowed to post on all of the platforms that I use because they're just tightening the chokehold on what we're allowed to make.
Yeah. No, I most certainly cannot, fathom the challenges that creators like yourself are going through. But I know further that, we're starting to see a regulatory model form out of the United Kingdom, for example, where strangulation pornography is ultimately illegal.
Mm-hmm.
And then other forms of porn that are, like age play or role playing or, step sibling or step parent dynamics, things that appear as defined as simulated pornography, simulated child pornography, even though it's, we don't call it that, but that's the legal term for it. It's where adults are simulating an age. They're playing a role as, someone younger than they may appear to be, to feed the fetish, to feed the kink, to feed the audience interest. And, that's always been protected here in the United States. But now we're starting to see that in the United Kingdom where they're even consensual strangulation, consensual choking play, consensual games that involve some form of, uh, consensual torture or anything like that, like CBT, other forms of BDSM, all sorts of things that could be considered illegal in these countries. And, studios definitely do not know how to respond to that. And platforms definitely do not know how to respond to that. And I'm starting to see that. And frankly, I can't answer that. I'm not an attorney, but it's just, how do you respond to that? It's really hard to say, because a lot of my friends in this industry do, particular fetish, do particular kinks like yourself. So it's just like, it's very hard to address that. And I don't know where we go from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then also with the worldwide nature of online content creation, like, it makes you wonder how these things will be enforced if something is created in California and then is then illegal in the UK, but someone views it in the UK. And like, how will these laws be used,
Of course, like, I'm hesitant to say this, but I feel like we're about to see situations where creators that are based in the United States or Canada or, in North America, Mexico even, they have warrants for their arrest in different countries.
Yeah.
And that means they're limited on where they can travel. They're limited on what they can do, especially if that particular country or countries have a extradition treaty or anything like that. And that's something that I'm very, very concerned to see. Most pornography in Europe comes from the Czech Republic, comes from France, comes from Cyprus, comes from Romania. So it's just like these countries, these foreign countries that own platforms, but the platform users are predominantly in the United States, but one country says you can't do this. That's a multinational attempt at regulating something that you cannot actually do to violate someone's sovereignty. Or so that just gets into the whole concept of comparative law, judicial rights, extrajudicial arrest. It gets complicated, and they're doing that on purpose. It really does feel like that.
Yeah, it's so complicated. It's so complicated. And now with like all the changing laws in the US, I've heard all sorts of stories of performers coming from other countries and having problems at the border, and just all sorts of sex workers just for having a sex work social media presence. And it's a crazy time we're living in.
But like, to build on that, I can't speak to this. I've just heard rumors, right? I can't speak to this as fact. I just speak to this as, I've heard rumors. It's just, how have we not seen viral news reports of sex workers being, arrested by ICE? It's just like I probably can't say that because that probably jinxed us, but it's just like, that is a logical question to ask.
Yeah. It's definitely happening whether the news reports on it or not. It's definitely happening. On that note, we are going to take a brief break. We'll be right back in just a moment.
The Queer Sex Workers Initiative for Refugees in Kenya is doing incredible work, despite the hurdles they experience in a country where being queer or a sex worker is illegal. They pay rent to maintain a shelter for their community members, one where they provide food and teach skills like creating crafts and jewelry. Their shelter and work is a safe haven for Kenyan refugees that identify as queer and or a sex worker. Visit qswir.org to learn more and to donate to their mission.
And we are back with YAS Podcast. I'm here with Michael McGrady. So Michael, let's talk about what's going on in Michigan right now. They're trying to pass a new law that is going to affect all of us in a lot of ways. What do you think about what's going on there?
So it's important to note that I truly believe this law is just for show.
Yeah.
It's a complete just vote getter, panty dropper for campaign dollars, right?
Yeah.
But a team of Republicans in Michigan have proposed a bill called the Anti-Corruption of Public Morals Act, which would would in theory ban all pornography.
Yeah.
In the state of Michigan. And if porn exists or anything along that line, or is there, it's punishable by felony convictions, six-figure fines, and porn producers and content creators could even be placed on a sexual offender list, sexual offender registry, as they're trying to define. And the person that's leading this, his name is Josh Shriver, or Schreiber. I can't pronounce his name, but Representative Josh Schreiber of Michigan. He's what I would call a Christian nationalist, Catholic integralist, or he's very far right.
Yeah.
Whatever you want to call it. And he's trying to make it illegal to watch porn, use a VPN to circumvent the law to watch porn, and to produce and distribute pornography within the state of Missouri. I mean, not Missouri, but the state of Michigan. I'm so sorry. I live in Missouri, so IMS. But the state of Michigan. Again, I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but it's interesting to look at just how stupid this bill is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And also, like, how are they going to define pornography, and how is this actually going to be enforced? And
so I actually have the definition for what they would consider prohibited materials right here. And it's as depiction, description, or simulation, whether real, animated, digitally generated, written, or auditory, of sexual acts that include any of the following: vaginal or anal intercourse, fellatio or cunnilingus, masturbation, ejaculation or orgasm, penetration with sexual devices, group sex, bondage, domination, or sadomasochism, acts involving bodily fluids for sexual arousal, erotic autonomous sensory meridian response content, moaning, or sensual voice content, animated, virtual, or sexual activity generated by artificial intelligence, depictions of characters acting or resembling minors in sexual contexts, and any other pornographic material.
So, according to this definition, the song To Love You Baby, the disco song, would be illegal.
According to this definition, Romeo and Juliet would be illegal.
This is absurd.
But it gets better. Well, it gets worse, actually. But better to laugh at, but worse because this is what people truly believe. Some of these people truly believe. Other forms of prohibited material include any depiction, description, or simulation, whether real, animated, digitally generated, written, or auditory, that includes a disconnection between biology and gender by an individual of one biological sex, imitating, depicting, or representing himself or herself to be of the other biological sex by means of a combination of attire, cosmetology, or prosthetics, or as having a reproductive nature contrary to the individual's biological sex, which by definition is they're trying to make it a crime to be transgender.
Wow.
Which is just abhorrent and really fucking terrible.
That's horrible. And also, I've noticed lately with all of these laws that are attacking queer people and adult content, there seems to be this conflation of queer gender representation with porn. Like, because you are trans, you are inherently sex worker, you know? Have you noticed that? Trans people lumped in as explicit content because they're
You have a lot of trans friends. I have a lot of trans friends in this industry. I can't speak to it because I'm cisgendered, but everything I've seen is a false conflation of gender identity with pornographic material, because they assume just because someone saw a YouTube video with a trans woman that it's ultimately pornographic, or they saw someone holding a Bud Light can who just so happens to be a trans woman. Apparently cisgendered straight men who are conservative are triggered by a trans woman co-opting their light beer. That goes all the way back to that stuff, and it's just like it's stuff like that. It's really nasty stuff, and it's acceptable now, and that's everybody has the right to free speech. Even in a lot of situations, what we would consider hate speech is protected by the First Amendment. Even disfavored speech, disfavored speech like porn, it's protected by the First Amendment. A lot of this shit is, but what they're trying to do now is they're literally trying to regulate and criminalize entire existence, and that itself is against what America is about. Yes, America isn't perfect. That is the truth. But in recent decades, we have this thing called the 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, and 5th and 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law. We gave women the right to vote in the 1920s. It's a shame to say that now I feel like the 20th century was more progressive than the 21st.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to say that. Especially very hard to say that, especially now.
It's a scary time we're living in. But yeah, I've noticed lately that there's like this conservative desire to, like, it's almost as if conservatives are so obsessed with what's beneath trans people's clothing that they themselves can't separate gender identity from sex acts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, how they're socialized. It's how they're indoctrinated. I shouldn't say indoctrinated. It's just how they were. Not necessarily how they're indoctrinated. It's just a lot of the people that make these claims, right? They're socialized to believe that things are one way or another, and then from there, it's also just people ultimately in these groups have never actually spoken to a trans person. They've never spoken to a lesbian. They've never spoken to a gay man. They've never spoken to, a queer person. They've never spoken to someone who is gender diverse. You know what I mean? And then they realize once they do, they earn some form of tolerance. Well, they not earn it, they gain it, because they realize they're just like human beings, just like you and I. And then they start to realize, just because some guy is dating a trans woman, or some trans man is dating a cis woman or something like that, it has nothing to do with anything. They're happy. If anything, they're probably straight in that point. So it's just I don't want to relitigate, everything I was taught in sexual studies and my gender studies courses and everything I learned at the Kinsey Institute and all that. But it's just there's nothing wrong with being trans. There's nothing wrong with being gender non-conforming. It's in fact, it's natural. It's who you are. It's scientifically proven. And when we say that, they're like, well, it's not science. The conservatives say that. And they're like, well, okay, so are you talking about genitalia or actual identity? And then they say, well, identity is not real. It's sociology. It's like, well, sociology is still science, you moron.
Yeah.
not even sociology, it's psychology. Psychology is still science. So it's just like, I don't know. It's
But
complicated, right?
there's an ignorance problem going on,
But it's not even just a systematic ignorance, it's a willful ignorance.
Yes. And a glorification of ignorance almost.
Truly.
Yeah. It's, man. So, in your opinion, what can we do going forward as sex workers, as queer people? What can we do going forward to fight this cultural and political shift that's happening right now?
Well, it's important to note I'm not necessarily a sex worker. I'm an ally, definitely. And I work in an allied position. What I would recommend, what I would say is that people have the right to be who they are,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of who's in power, the dominant perception of the time. And any delineation of that, anything that goes against that is just bullshit, because people have these rights. People have the ability to identify themselves as how they were born.
Mm-hmm.
They have the right to do all of these things. And it's not harming anybody. You're not losing rights. In fact, just because someone wants rights, that doesn't mean that you're going to lose rights.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would tell the ultra conservatives. But at the end of the day, what I would tell my brothers and sisters in sex work, my fellow human beings
Mm-hmm.
in this industry, just keep being true to yourself, and history will prove us right. Always has.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's gonna hurt. It's gonna suck. It's gonna be a long time. And I'm here to support all of you in the best way I can. But it's just utter bullshit that we have to be going through this again. But unfortunately, history repeats itself, and it's our time. It's our generation's time to reclaim our rights.
Yep, that's true. That's true. We have to stay strong and keep fighting and not allow our rights to be taken from us. Thank you. This has been awesome talking to you today. I'm really glad we got to have you on.
I've missed you and your partner since we connected, and y'all have been great for me, and looking forward to seeing you all again in January. And just keep up your great work too, Daisy. You're doing wonderful things, and I think your podcast is doing great as well, so that's awesome.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to say to our listeners before we close out?
Vote when you can. Take a look at my work at AVN. I am on Blue Sky.
Yes.
My username on Blue Sky is mdmcjr.press. Follow me there. We can connect there. I answer most of my DMs. You can also email me if you have tips or news, or you just want to share feedback or hate mail. Other one. But other than that, thank you for having me. It's always good being on, industry podcasts, and it's always good just talking to friends and like-minded folks.
Totally. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And this has been another episode of YAS Podcast. Please make sure you like and subscribe. And if you have enjoyed listening to our talk today, you can also donate. We are a tax-deductible nonprofit. So thank you so much.
All right. And just to specify really quick, my views do not necessarily reflect those of AVN or my publishers. I'm just saying, that's just my personal view. All right. So please keep that in mind, everybody. And Thank you again, Ruby.
Thank you.
YAS Podcast is produced by YAS Work.
which is a nonprofit dedicated to educating and entertaining audiences about sex work through media. Learn more about how you can get involved in the podcast and our organization by visiting yaswork.org. That's YASWORK.org.